Um, there's been a lot that has gone on this week with all this garbage in the courts and bankruptcy, and oh man, it's crazy. So I am not a very good communicator. I realize that, but there's been so much going on, and people have questions, and so I thought I better do an update. We did have a really good win yesterday, I guess. I mean, it's interesting what we call wins because ultimately what happened is there was this in the whole bankruptcy proceeding, there was this $200,000 of what I believe was corporate funds from my corporation, Avis Bondi. And of course, St. Luke's wanted it, and they were wanting it. And then, the trustee was claiming that it was part of the estate. And so there was this big question about it. And so the trustee went into a settlement agreement with me right around the end of March, I believe, beginning end of March. Well, we went back and forth. They offered, we kind of went back and we ended up settling. Well, of course, St. Luke's opposed, so it went into a whole bunch of litigation. Finally, yesterday, it came to a decision by the court after 5 months. And that's just the way this has gone because St. Luke's has so much money to pay lawyers, and they evidently hate me that much that they're willing to spend millions of dollars in legal fees to basically fight every little thing that is going on. I want to just give you an idea. It's been just a little over a year, and there's nearly or right over 500 docket items on the court in the court. And docket items, if you don't know, they're basically every time someone files something, they're a docket that the court records. And there's either right under or right over 500 docket items in this bank just in the bankruptcy case, and it's only been a year. But anyway, I don't want to not be appreciative because we did win that settlement agreement, and ultimately this makes it so that um, I could buy back my cars, and I get to keep some of the cash and buy back my furniture. I get to buy. See, that's what's crazy. We call it a win because I get to buy back the stuff that I already owned at one time. So anyway, it ended up being a settlement of 120,000, and so that's what it is. And but the fact that St. Luke's fought so hard, spent so much money in litigation, and deposed everybody, and caused all kinds of chaos, and uh, and then they lost. I guess we have to somewhat be grateful that it was a win. So a question that people have is about the summary judgment too. Let me explain that a little bit, and hopefully this isn't too boring. I'm going to get into a couple more things that might seem a little less technical, but uh, St. Luke sued me twice in the bankruptcy. Uh, and these are called adversarial proceedings, but they're pretty much like a lawsuit inside the bankruptcy. And they sued me one because basically they keep falsely accusing me of hiding assets and all the garbage that you hear in the media, so forth, which is just ridiculous. But anyway, so they're bringing that on. They want the court to basically, determine that I can't go bankrupt. I can't have the debt discharged because of these false allegations of me hiding assets. In fact, Mr. Stidham one time in a conversation said that either his clients believe or somehow they threw the number out there like I like might have 10,000 or $10 million or something like that. Ah, I mean, good luck trying to find that. Anyway, the summary judgment basically is supposed to be because the second lawsuit. It's about the second lawsuit. And they basically said because they found that I was in the Idaho court, they determined through this sham trial, they determined that I had maliciously intended to hurt St. Luke's and the the other the doctor and the nurse and the CEO, that I maliciously intended to do that. And so therefore he just wants the judge not for the trial to go to, the lawsuit to go to trial. He just wants the judge to rule, which is called a summary judgment, and just rule that I can't go bankrupt because of the malicious intent that the state court uh, determined through that sham trial that I didn't participate in. And so anyway, I responded to the summary judgment motion from St. Luke's quite a bit. Did a bunch of writing and arguing in court, in hearings and so forth. It was quite a bit of a hassle. And one presented to the judge that that the it was actually a default judgment in Idaho. And then later they had a trial to determine the damages, but the actual judgment was a default judgment. So that's a legal argument there. But second, I argued that the Idaho trial, cannot be trusted because it was a sham. One, it was uncontested, but it was a sham, in the sense that, and I, say this very clearly with a lot of background that I have done to make sure that this is not something that I don't understand. But Mr. Stidham, Eric Stidham, the lead attorney from Holland and Hart, with the CEO, Chris Roth, presented to the jury a altered video where they cut and spliced and cut out narrative, spliced videos together, basic to make me look like I was saying something opposite of what I was saying. And you can go to the channel here and see that video. There's even a side-by-side comparison where it's basically saying the same thing, and then where you see where they altered it and where I said exactly opposite, or the intention was exactly opposite. And they presented that to the jury, and they presented it, both Eric Stidham and CEO Chris Roth presented it to the jury as if it was my words, unedited, unspliced, uncut, unaltered. And and then they since then have tried to defend that by lying to the court, saying that they presented the entire video to the jury, which they did not, and that they only presented a splice, or a clip, excuse me, not a splice, a clip of the video later. Both those are inaccurate, and I don't know if what game they're thinking they're playing. Maybe that I won't keep pushing it, but I presented that, and then I also presented, the lies of the testimonies in the trial, such as Dr. Natasha Erickson proffered to the jury that she never threatened the family with CPS. But in her own medical notes, it says that she spoke with the family and told them that if they didn't obey her medical demands, that she would report them, or what I think in the thing it says, contact or make a report with CPS. That's a threat. And then, of course, you got Rachel Thomas, Dr. Rachel Thomas, in the emergency room when Cyrus came in. She said that he looked like a Haiti baby. She said that he was the worst case that she'd ever seen, and she'd gone to Haiti 3 times and overseen 2 more Haiti trips, and that this baby Cyrus was the worst that she's ever seen. However, in her medical note, she actually says, this is a healthy baby with no interventions. She says he doesn't need to be in the hospital. And the whole plan was to discharge him with the foster parents that were there waiting. So how could that be? So she's saying he's a healthy baby. She actually says it twice. There's record in the EMT record and one other record where she actually says it twice. And then she says he's a healthy baby with no interventions, and has no need basically to be in the hospital. These are the things that she said. And then later, after Eric Stidham was able to work with her and get the false narrative out to the jury, um, later she told the jury that baby Cyrus would have died if they hadn't taken him, excuse me, and that it was he was the malnutritioned and the worst conditioned baby that she'd ever seen, even in her trips to Haiti. So anyway, that's pretty hilarious. One more thing, the Meridian Police stuff is still out there. Meridian Police openly admitted, well, their lawyers openly admitted that they had such damning information that it would, if it was to go public, that the public would be outcry, and also that the Meridian police officers would not get a fair trial. And this information has something to do directly with me. We don't know what it is. It's exculpatory, obviously, but um, we haven't been able to get our hands on it. So anyway, there is a lot that's going on. Like I said, in order to litigate in this bankruptcy, there's over 500 docket items. Well, right around just over 500 docket items in this case already, and I've had to litigate these things and have much more to do. Um, One of the things that came out, well, that was became more clear, is that when St. Luke's took. So let me actually I'll explain this a little bit. So I had a corporation called Abish Husbandai Inc. It means basically a good steward or a good husbandry person, basically taking care of something that's what the name means. But beside that, I had this, and I was a shareholder in it, and then there was three other shareholders. Well, St. Luke's went to the Wyoming courts, and this was during the time I was, trying to move to Utah. I felt like if I was going to stay in Idaho, they ultimately I think they would have pitched to local law enforcement against me and killed me. I think that's pretty clear. They kept doing that over and over. They kept filing for contempt, filing for arrest. This was St. Luke's doing this, and it just got to where I had to leave. I felt, that if I didn't, that they were going to take my life, and so I did. Left to Idaho, and then I, of course, was scrambling, trying to, get my feet on the ground here. They had taken all my income. They had seized all my bank accounts. They had made it so it was almost very, very difficult to provide for my family. So I'm in the middle of that while that's all going on. Meanwhile, they went to Wyoming, and they got the Wyoming courts there, probably through, their litigation and all the lawyers and blah, blah, blah. They got the court there to transfer that business, the Abish Husbandai business, with the four shareholders, me being one of them. But they got them to transfer the entire business over to a St. Luke's corporation called Cocoa Grove, and all the shares, not just my shares, but all the other shares as well. They just took 100% of them, stole them. And then, of course, once they did that, they took all the assets, which there's about $4 million worth of assets, free and clear in that corporation. And they just took it, and the Wyoming court just let them. And I mean, what about these other shareholders? So anyway, we found out that the president of this corporation is called Cocoa Grove, which is St. Luke's basically formed corporation. Well, he's a lawyer in Boise there, and he was brought in as a witness in the settlement hearing. And boy, that guy does not like me. I can't remember his name right now, but I'll bring it up some other time. Can't I? He sure doesn't like me. He had a lot of contempt for me, but I think it's pretty obvious. And a guy like that is he's not very stable. He shouldn't be a representative because his contempt is going to show and he's going to make mistakes. But anyway, that's kind of what went on. I will say that this guy that, man, I really should have remembered his name, but we found out that he was lead counsel. So he was an attorney for Ada County Sheriff's Department when Stephen Bartlett was the sheriff. And many of you don't know it because I've never been open about this, but I'm going to tell you a little story about the Ada County Sheriff. Um, and there's some hearsay in it. So, but I'm going to tell you what I know. So I think it was the fall of 2021. I got a contact by a good friend of mine by the name of John Ritzheimer, and he was had a close friend that he had known for a long, long time, who was a sheriff deputy in the Ada County Sheriff's Department. And this sheriff was extremely concerned and wanted me to expose something to the public. And that was that Sheriff Stephen Bartlett was trading promotions for sexual favors. So people wanted to be promoted. They give uh, Sheriff Bartlett a sexual favor, and they would have a better chance or be promoted. And I don't know this if this was male deputies or female deputies or both, but this is what the deputy wanted to tell me. Well, ultimately, what happened was we could not talk the deputy into going public himself. Like he just got too scared. He kind of went back and forth, and ultimately decided that it was too risky and it was too much of a threat for him to go public. Well, I wasn't going to go public without a firsthand witness, right? So I never made it public, other than I mentioned it briefly in a press conference, a written press conference for my candidacy when I left the Republican Party. You can go back to votebundy.com and look at it. But what I read, but I just briefly mentioned it. But this was all going on, and this would have been going on the same time that this counsel person or this lawyer was the lead counsel for Stephen Bartlett, and now this same guy is the president director of this Cocoa Grove corporation that basically is a St. Luke's corporation that took all the assets out of my company, stole the shares that didn't even belong to me, stole them all, and then took control of all the properties and assets of the company, and now are trying to sell them so that they can give them to St. Luke's and to the St. Luke's parties. Those people that actually lied in court are getting, they want to get paid. And we're talking about, upwards around $4 million. Now, I will say this when it comes to Sheriff Stephen Bartlett, let me tell you what happened, because shortly after that, I'm just talking about a month or so after I found out all this information, maybe a couple months, all of a sudden, out of the blue, Sheriff Stephen Bartlett resigned, and no one knew why. No one understood why. And then Idaho State Police, actually it was Post. I don't know if they're the same thing or not, but Post, which is basically I think the policing certification, but I think they're with Idaho State Police. They opened an investigation on Stephen Bartlett, and it was kind of private. And Stephen Bartlett refused to participate. And then they just eventually, it wasn't very long after, they closed the investigation and sealed it. And the public never heard about it. And that's basically what happens in Idaho. Well, it happens all over, but it's really bad in Idaho because they protect their own. And there was no accountability there. Mr. Bartlett had no accountability. He resigns, yeah, and he leaves the state, yeah. but it was never public why. And I mean, Ada County, they've got hundreds of deputies. They're the largest county in the state. It's where the state capital is. It's where Boise is. It's all of that. And here, I mean, I don't know how many times his deputies probably arrested me. And here he's just a dirty, rotten pervert. And he's literally using sexual favors as a qualification for promotion inside the Ada County Sheriff's Department, according to this deputy. And now you got his lead counsel here, which is hard for me to believe that he wouldn't have known about this. You got him, who's again part of the good old boys club, and now he's in control of all the property that was in the corporation that I worked for, my entire life to build that wealth. And anyway, it's crazy, crazy stuff. And then they take shares in the corporation that don't even belong to me. So I will say this: I think there's a lot to play out here, and I believe that the hand of God is starting to show, and the tides are starting to turn. And I believe that we're going to win this completely. It's going to take some time, and St. Luke's is going to lose completely. And I believe that the glory is going to have to be given to God, because even there's certain things that I don't want to disclose right now, because they're kind of strategic things that I was inspired over a year ago, well over a year ago, it was 2 years ago, to do, that now are making a difference, that now are coming into play. And if I wouldn't have done those things back then, and to be honest with you, I didn't even know why I was doing them. I just felt I was supposed to. I was just trying to be obedient. Now they're coming into play now, and I think, because of the corruption and the hate they have for me, and because I was not able to defend myself for many reasons, and they got away with all these things. I think in the end we're going to see. I believe that in the end we're going to see some justice, and it's going to take some time. We're going to have to keep pushing, and sometimes earlier this week I didn't know if I could go another hour, and now I feel pretty optimistic. So I really appreciate your prayers. My family appreciate your prayers. I can't say enough about my beautiful wife and how loyal she is to me, and my children, and how patient they are with me. Um, uh, I mean, I just can't say. And then I'm grateful for the Lord and His great guidance, and He continues to protect and inspire. And I believe it's through His hand that these things will be reversed. And I appreciate your prayers, because prayers do provoke the heavens to move and to act. And the more prayers, the more power. So thank you very much.